Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We're just waiting on a few more people to join. So there's some people entering right now. So we're just going to give it a couple minutes and then we'll get started. All right, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Disha Patel. I'm an account manager here at KTL. David Bedard and Suzanne Walker will be presenting this webinar today. David is also an account manager here at KTL. Both David and I recently completed the CMMC AB registered practitioner training, and we are awaiting our final steps for it to become official. Suzanne is the director of channel sales at CallTower, and we are going to be open for Q&A today. So please input any questions that you may have into the chat box, and we'll be monitoring those questions, and we will address those at the end. And we will also be recording this, so after today's session, a link with the recording will go out to everyone. And then our agenda today will cover Microsoft Teams and Office 365 for GCC-High, specifically talking about direct routing and how it works in GCC-High. Then we will get into our exciting news of our recent partnership with CallTower to provide access to phone and conference calling in Teams built on the Azure Government platform. I'm going to go ahead and switch things over to David.
Thank you for the introductions, Disha. And thank you everybody for joining us today. At KTL, as you know, we strive to be more than a company that just sells you licensing and provides migration of data before sending you on your way. Many know that we provide a full range of configuration and consulting services around Microsoft. What some might not be aware of is that we also cover assisting in the configuration and setup of Dynamics 365, which is now available in GCC-High, has been for a little bit. But in addition to the Dynamics consulting and configuration, we also provide an ever-expanding range of CMMC consulting services, and just awaiting the final steps from the accreditation body before announcing our official status, meaning we're just waiting for our badges. To date, KTL does offer CMMC consulting services specific to your GCC-High and Azure Government environment. In this regards, we provide our clients a three-phase approach, and really what that covers is a gap assessment of your current environment to kind of meet, see where you're meeting the road with NIST 800-171 and CMMC requirements. We provide you and generate the documentation around those requirements and how those controls are being met, which you can then turn around and place within your system security plan or your SSP, along with recommendations for additional controls that might not be in place that Microsoft can cover. And then we move on to our final phase of that approach, which is really going through, and once you've obtained those controls, we would implement and configure those controls and provide you with a change implementation process that would include updating the documents that you could then place that information within your SSP. Okay. In addition to our CMMC consulting services, we're working internally to expand our KTL 360 managed service offerings to cover GCC-High. So feel free to reach out to us after the webinar if you want to learn more about our range of services in GCC-High. So that said, let's get started with Teams in GCC-High and kind of go through a little bit of a history. I mean, as we know, feature parities kind of lag behind in GCC-High from commercial, albeit things have gotten better over the last couple of years, with one of them, one item being missing, and that was earlier in this year. The ability to make and receive calls and set up conference lines in Teams has been made available through the process of direct routing. Since everyone on the call is in various stages of preparing for the DFARS, interim to go into effect, we wanted to take the time to make sure to introduce this partnership with CallTower. Reason being is CMMC specifically calls out VoIP requirements in their system and communication protection domain, which is part of the NIST 800-171 requirements. And what CallTower has done is they've replicated their commercial platform into GCC-High, so it actually resides in Azure Government Cloud. That means when it comes to authentication, CallTower is sitting in the same directory network services as your organization in GCC-High. So what does that mean? By having users on GCC-High, it becomes challenging to authenticate and log VoIP traffic if that traffic starts out of your environment. So by having everybody on the same platform, it becomes a lot more straightforward to control, monitor, and protect the use of VoIP as required under the CMMC's requirements of 3.189 and 3.190. So the real key takeaways here around your compliance requirements of NIST and CMMC, before I turn it over to Suzanne, are GCC-High, it's its own separate environment, and CallTower resides in the Azure Government Cloud. So that's what GCC-High sits on. And it usually, they utilize certified audio codes, session border controllers as well. So, with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Suzanne, and the floor is yours, and take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David. I'm very excited to be here, really excited about our partnership with KTL. And I can't wait to talk about what, direct routing with CallTower for Microsoft Teams looks like. So just to give you a little bit of background before we begin, I think it's important just to tell you a little bit about who CallTower is. I know you guys understand who KTL is and work with them on a day-to-day basis. But for CallTower, we've been a voice service provider for almost the last 20 years. We started back in 2002 with our hosted voice offering. We are a US-based company. We're headquartered out of Salt Lake City, Utah. From a service and support standpoint, of course, we're 24/7, 365 days a year. But I think the really important thing to note about CallTower is we don't outsource any of our support. If you have a service issue or a billing question, whatever the case may be, we are going to handle that for you with a W-2 CallTower employee. CallTower is a Microsoft Gold partner as well as a CSP. And when it comes to, we're talking about voice enabling Microsoft Teams, we've been actually voice enabling Microsoft services since our partnership started with them back in 2008. If you can remember Office Communicator, of course, then there was Link, Skype for Business, and here we are with Teams. We were one of the first direct routing partners that kind of Microsoft tapped on the shoulder from a commercial standpoint to start doing the direct routing. And we turned up our first voice commercial Teams customer at the end of 2018. With all that said, because of our success with our commercial direct routing program, we were allowed to kind of enter into this GCC-High direct routing program with Microsoft, not only for the audio conferencing, but also for the phone system portion. Okay. Just to highlight just some of our kind of milestones when it comes to Microsoft Teams. Again, we kind of implemented and turned up our first customer at the end of 2018. We've had a lot of success on the commercial side with integrations and adding hardware and that kind of thing. But because we're here focused on GCC-High today, I really want to kind of zero in on that. We started the beta testing with our GCC-High audio conferencing in February of this year. That went swimmingly, and we worked out all the kinks and bugs and turned it into a full production product in April of 2020. That was for the audio conferencing portion. Phone system was added shortly thereafter. We turned up our first phone system customer in May of 2020. From a network standpoint, I think it's important to understand what the CallTower network looks like. And for us, we have a robust, geo-redundant, carrier-grade network. Again, we've been doing voice for almost the last 20 years. Our network is completely optimized for voice. We have got obviously the voice proficiency, things like porting of telephone numbers, 911, assigning new numbers across all 50 states and in over 71 international locations as well. With our GCC-High edition, as David mentioned earlier, this lives in a separate cloud from our commercial space. It has to, just to meet those compliancy standpoints. It does live in that Azure Government cloud. So right now, CallTower is the only provider out there with a full hosted solution that can enable a voice and audio conferencing for GCC-High. From an implementation standpoint, at CallTower, you'll work with a dedicated project manager. What we do is we hold a kickoff call, and this is where we uncover the scope of the project. With our audio conferencing customers, it's fairly easy, but when we're looking at going and making this become also your phone system, of course, we want to gather things like your call flow, your auto attendant, and those kind of things, just so that we can build and get this solution, completely stood up for you as expected. We hold weekly calls just to keep the project on track, and we work at that pace through activation. We can also help just not only support from the implementation standpoint, but for user adoption as well as user and admin training of the services. The one thing I do want to point out with GCC-High, as we know, as much as we all love Microsoft, with the GCC-High, we know that some of the features and products, if you will, sometimes are slower to come to this environment. And I have to say that would be true on the phone system side of things. These are a few of the known gotchas or the known things out there right now that just aren't available in GCC-High. Things like this, like what we're doing right now, this Teams Live event. There's also, if you do have physical handsets, there's not a device management through the Teams admin portal currently. From an auto attendant standpoint, there's a couple of things within the auto attendant you need to be aware of. There is not a dial by name lookup in the auto attendant. There's also not the ability to, let's say, if you press 1 for an option, to have that transfer out to an external number. These are all things that are a part of the roadmap, the GCC-High roadmap by Microsoft, and we look for those to be resolved within the first part of 2021. All right. The other kind of neat thing about CallTower is the ability for us to provide some redundancy when we're talking about the phone system portion of Microsoft Teams. Because CallTower actually would own your telephone numbers, those would be ported over to our network and living in our environment. We've got some ability to set up this failover. Let's say that there is whether Teams is completely down, or even if it's a degradation in service. Much like on our commercial side, we can also kind of offer this failover solution on the GCC-High side. And David, if you hit enter one more time, it'll show kind of the automation here. So what we're seeing is, again, if the service is having a degradation or going down, we've got the ability via kind of some of our other voice platforms to build, let's say, a backup auto attendant. So we can make it mimic what the Teams auto attendant says, but it will just be hosted on it's our CT Cloud Voice, which is a Metaswitch based product. From there, you could have it potentially, if you want to proceed to the next slide, you could have the auto attendant possibly overflow to, let's say, a voicemail box. That way, if there again is a situation with Teams being down or impaired, at least your inbound calls are still coming through. People are able to leave messages. Another option would be having numbers forwarded to, let's say, a personal device like a cell phone device. Again, that way, keeping your inbound calls processing and coming through and giving the appearance that the business is still up and running. I will point out, we've been doing Teams voice on the commercial side for almost the last 2 years. We've had 3 incidents on the commercial side. So far in the GCC-High environment, we've had no outages, no impairments of the service. So good news there, I suppose, right? All right. So with that said, I want to turn it back over to David to kind of really drive home and talk about some more advantages between CallTower and KTL's partnership.
Thank you, Suzanne. So, kind of wrapping up the tail end here, we're very excited about being able to bring the availability of voice into GCC-High through CallTower's expertise. This is something that many organizations have asked for, have looked for, and when direct routing was released earlier this year by Microsoft in GCC-High, the demand, started to double up, and people were looking for solutions. And it was one of those things where KTL, we keep our eye on the industry. We understand what's important for our clients and for our potential customers, and we actively look to bring you the best in breed solutions. So, we're excited to have this partnership here with CallTower. And just so you're aware, throughout the project, process, you're going to still be working with the project staff that you're familiar with here at KTL. We're just going to leverage the folks over at CallTower, their expertise, their solution to bring voice to your GCC-High tenant. So I want to thank you for your time today. Really appreciate you taking some time to listen to this presentation. I'm going to turn this over to Disha so she could outline some other things, and then we'll handle some questions.
Thanks, David. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact your KTL account manager to start this journey. And we do want to let you know we have another GCC-High webinar coming up on December 9th regarding Dynamics 365 for sales in the government. So feel free to register for that. And then we do have a few questions that have came through the chat box, so we're going to go ahead and answer those for you. So the first one is, can we have UK-based numbers?
Hi. So absolutely. For both the audio conferencing portion and as well as the phone system, we can assign UK-based numbers. For audio conferencing, that UK-based number could be used, obviously, for that as someone sitting in London, let's say, to dial into that Teams meeting. And then on the phone system side, if you want to appear to have a presence in the UK, or even have some local clients, in the UK that want to reach you via kind of a direct call, we've got the ability not only to assign a new number, but if you had numbers that you wanted to port over to our services.
Great. Another question that came in says, can we just add conference call numbers to Microsoft Teams so that folks who can't use Teams can dial into our Teams meetings?
Absolutely. That's what the GCC-High direct routing audio conferencing allows the service to do. It gives your Teams meeting a local dial-in number. So again, for people that maybe aren't in front of their computer, can't access the web link, they've got that dial-in number to listen to the audio of your meeting.
Okay.
And just to kind of expand on that answer a little bit, The amount of licenses you would need would be dependent on how many people would be setting up these meetings in order to have people join them. So it's only the people that are setting up the meetings that need the license for the audio conferencing.
Great. So there's another question that says, are you going to offer ad hoc numbers? We would not want to switch our entire phone system over.
So by ad hoc numbers, and without kind of knowing more details around this question, so from the audio conferencing side, we would assign a new CallTower number for your audio conference bridge. On the phone system side of things, if you want to start using Teams, let's say maybe do a trial of it or you know, test it out to make sure it's going to fit your needs, we could always stand you up with you know, CallTower numbers, assign new telephone numbers out of, you know, your rate center wherever you're located across the country, without having to port over your numbers from your current provider.
Great. And then one more question, what is the cost per user?
Cost per user. So within the audio conferencing part of it, it's tiered based on the number of users that want to be able to have a dial-in number for their Teams meeting. So we've kind of tiered it from 1 to 100, from 101 users to 500. And so just to kind of give you an idea, if you're an organization that say let's 80 users and 80 users want to have a dial-in bridge for their Teams meeting, the monthly cost to subscribe to the audio conferencing on CallTower would be $199 a month. Phone system is priced out a little bit differently. It's a $495 per user calling plan calling plan. I can't speak today. Calling plan with a 2 cent a minute usage rate.
All right, great. It looks like those were all the questions that came in. So just wanted to say thank you all again for joining us today. We will be sending this recording out shortly. If anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your account manager and we'll get back to you. And again, we will be having another webinar next month and would love for you all to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.